So let's go to the next slide real quick, and we'll give a little background information here where what our situation was in Oklahoma is that we've had tremendous amount of turnover in our districts. We've had some budgetary issues where we weren't filling positions. So what we found was 30% of our staff in districts had 5 years or less of experience. And at the time that we did this all statewide training in the spring of this year, we had about 105 employees. That has since grown because we've been able to employ some more folks. So it looks like we may need to come up with a part 2 of the training. With the budgetary situations that we've had, we've been sharing staff between districts. We've continually asked them to do more and more with less resources. And the continual message from our Employees Association and everything we do was we need training. And so in an effort to try to focus what the training was that was needed, the common mantra that we got back was we need training on everything, which is a real challenge. So next slide, please. So we took a little bit heavier-handed approach in Oklahoma with mandatory training because districts do receive almost 100% of their funding directly from the state agency. And so our executive director sent out message to all boards that this was, it was a duty and responsibility for districts to take advantage of the training that we were going to offer, that it was in fact mandatory. And if there was any kind of exemption to be had, it had to be presented in writing from the board, not from the employee, to the executive director prior to the training. So in essence, we had probably 90% participation. So I think that for us, that worked quite well. So we held this in Oklahoma City for 2 days. And we asked districts that had the ability to fund their employees' travel. But for those that could not, the Conservation Partnership actually, and you can go on to that next slide there, Ray. Mm-hmm. So the training sponsors, they covered the cost of rooms, meals, if funding wasn't available. And NRCS was even a partner on that as well. So we'll look for the first day. It was great timing for us. We were rolling out the new year for our cost share program, so we were able to really hit on that. The state association had opportunity to talk with folks about the work that they're doing and some of the grants that they had been securing for districts, as well as NRCS. We had not only the state conservationists, but we brought in one of the district conservationists to talk about what their view of the NRCS partnership was. And then we also took advantage of having one of our commissioners as well as a district director talk to him about what his thoughts were on how directors view working with districts and those sorts of things. So then as the day continued, we got way down in the weeds on all different number of topics. You can go to that next slide and we'll look at that part of the agenda. We hit on as many different folks to present so that they didn't have to hear from me for the majority of everything because that just would get a little old. And then on the second day, there we go. We split the group. Some of them needed continuing education for their pesticide applicators licenses that they do when they're working on our upstream flood control structures. And then we continued with yet another laundry list. You can see on the one side, from everything from board meetings to records to surplus of equipment and earning local funds and unfair competition and all of those different different sorts of things. The after lunch, we didn't take any opportunity we hit every minute we could because we had such a short time frame. 2 days is really not enough when you're trying to cover the waterfront. And I think going forward, we will need to focus in more specifically on specific topics because you could only scratch the surface on many of the things that we were talking about. So at the end of the training, they received a notebook with all of the information. They had a flash drive with every PowerPoint presentation on it that was presented, and we asked them to complete a training evaluation and with these questions asked. And so some of the responses, I'll tell you that they learned that there were way more resources at their disposal than many of them ever realized. They noticed that we have great people and that everyone's willing to help, and that we try to treat everyone the same. They were, one of the funny ones that we thought was they were disappointed that the long range plan still had to be done because we had taken that to a whole new level. And many of them plan to discuss the training with their directors, and hopefully that would be the next step for us in that regard is moving this on to directors. So our lessons learned is that you've got a large room. Everybody learns in a different way. So you've got to use many different methods to convey information, whether it's actual hands-on activities, small groups, whatever you can do with what your facilities will allow. We've come to the conclusion that not everyone can read and follow directions, which is a huge undertaking for many. The partnership is alive and well in that they put cash money into the training to be able to make sure that this doesn't take another 5 years to do. And so with that being said, we are going to be looking at ways to, as our newer folks come in, how do we do training with them? Does it need to be one-on-one? And we can go to the final slide. That's our next steps, is besides hitting directors with training, also now how do we make sure that we maintain what we've started?